In this video, I answered 20 CompTIA Security Plus practice questions and show you exactly how to answer each question. The process is simple. Pick out the keywords and phrases for each question and then use the process of elimination to get the best answer. Now, this is the method I recommend and teach students, and it's the best way to answer any CompTIA questions. Now, follow along with me, see how to tackle each one of these questions, and let's get to question one. All right, question one. A company installs warning signs, visible cameras, and motion-triggered lighting around its data center to discourage unauthorized access attempts. Which of the following types of controls is being implemented in this scenario? A. Deterrent control to discourage malicious activity. B. Preventative control to physically block attackers. C. Compensating control to make up for missing technical safeguards. Or D. Corrective control to restore operations after an incident. All right, so the key here is to discourage unauthorized access attempts. All right, the goal isn't to stop or catch, it's to influence decision making before a violation occurs. So let's get to the process of elimination. We can start with B, preventative control. Preventative controls stop an action outright. Cameras don't physically just stop anything. Next, we can eliminate D, corrective control. Now, corrective controls help recover or repair after something bad has happened. Okay? And finally, we can eliminate C, compensating control. And a compensating control, those are alternative safeguards when a preferred one isn't feasible. Okay? So that leaves us with A, deterrent control. And a deterrent control, they are meant to, influence behavior, not directly stop it. Something like warning signs and visible cameras, those are things that make people think twice. Question 2. A department installs unimproved cloud apps for file sharing without involving IT. What type of threat actor does this represent? A. Insider threat. B. Nation state. C. Shadow IT. Or D. Hacktivist. Okay, so I will say that the key phrase for this one is without involving IT. Now, this shows that users are working on their own, and there's a specific type of word for this, which is the answer, obviously. So let's go into the process of elimination now, and we can start with eliminating D, hacktivist. And hacktivists, they are external and pretty much ideologically driven, so we can rule that one out. Next, we can eliminate B, nation state. And nation states are external, well-funded, and politically motivated. And finally, we can eliminate A, insider threat. And insider threats imply malicious or negligent intent, and that's not what is being described here, okay? And that leaves us with C, shadow IT. And simply put, shadow IT is when employees use tech that is not sanctioned by IT. All right, question 3. A penetration tester connects to an open corporate Wi-Fi network and uses a tool to capture unencrypted credentials being transmitted by employees. Which of the following best describes the type of attack being used? A, rogue access point. B, credential replay. C, man-in-the-middle attack. Or D, wireless packet sniffing. All right, so the key phrase for this one is capturing unencrypted credentials. So this points directly to passive monitoring, okay? So let's go ahead and do the process elimination. And right off the bat, we can start with rogue access point. Now, a rogue access point is like an access point that is malicious or unauthorized, and it's a device set up to impersonate a legitimate Wi-Fi network. Now, little tip here, rogue access point is not in the 701 exam objectives, so we can rule that one out. Next, we can eliminate B, credential replay. This attack involves capturing valid authentication data and resending it to gain access. It's important to understand that with this scenario, the attack that is happening is passive. So that's important to get this one right. And finally, we can eliminate C, a man-in-the-middle attack. Now, while somewhat related, a man-in-the-middle attack actively intercepts and relays communication between two parties. Now, based on the scenario, this is too aggressive compared to what's happening. And that leaves us with D, wireless packet sniffing. And this is just simply the act of capturing and analyzing wireless data packets, especially on unsecured networks, and allows the attacker to review credentials in plain text. Question 4. A company replaces stored social security numbers with random values and secures the originals in a separate vault. What technique is being used? A. Data masking. B. Tokenization. C. Hashing. Or D. Obfuscation. Okay, so the key phrase for this one is secures the originals in a separate vault. All right, this hints towards not changing the actual value. So let's go ahead and do the process of elimination now. And we can start with D, obfuscation. And this makes data harder to interpret, but does not provide structured like substitution or secure storage. Next, we can eliminate C, hashing. And hashing converts data to a fixed output that's irreversible. So this is not the right one. And finally, we can eliminate A, data masking. And data masking is used to hide parts of data for like display reasons, such as showing only the last 4 digits of a social security or a birth date or like a credit card. So that is data masking. And that leaves us with B, tokenization. And tokenization, that substitutes sensitive data with tokens that are meaningless on their own while keeping real data in a token vault. Now, this allows safe use in systems without exposing the true values. Question 5. An employee attempts to log into a familiar service, but accidentally mistypes a URL and is redirected to a nearly identical fake website that captures their credentials. Which threat vector is being used in this scenario? A, watering hole. B, brand impersonation. C, typo squatting. Or D, pretexting. Okay, so the key phrases here are mistypes the URL, and I would also say redirected to a nearly identical fake website. Now, these details point towards a domain manipulation tactic that's going on that relies on user error to redirect them to the malicious site. So let's go ahead and do the process of elimination. And right away, we can start with eliminating a watering hole. And a watering hole that involves compromising a legitimate site users already trust, so not mistyping a URL. Next, we can eliminate D, pretexting. And since there's no social interaction or fabricated scenario involved in this redirection, we can rule this one out. And finally, we can eliminate B, brand impersonation, which is more commonly seen in things like phishing emails or malicious ads, but not through the act of an error when typing the URL. And that leaves us with C, typo squatting. And typo squatting is a type of social engineering attack that relies on users mistyping URLs and landing on malicious domains designed to mimic legitimate ones. And the end goal is often to harvest the credentials. Question 6. A user reports that their account credentials were used to access internal systems, but after investigation, there is no sign of phishing or external compromise. Only unusual keystroke activity was recorded from their device. Which type of malware is most likely responsible for this incident? A, worm. B, logic bomb. C, keylogger. Or D, rootkit. Okay, so the key phrase for this one is, without a doubt, unusual keystroke activity. This suggests that user input was secretly recorded rather than captured through things like deception or system-wide compromises. So let's go into the process of elimination. And we can first start by eliminating a worm. Since worms spread across systems and networks, they don't usually monitor keystrokes. Next, we can eliminate B, logic bomb. And a logic bomb refers to code triggered by specific events or conditions. And it's not passive input recording, which is what's being described in this scenario here. And finally, we can eliminate D, a rootkit. And a rootkit hides malicious activity at the OS level, but isn't specifically used for capturing keystrokes. And that leaves us with the answer, which is C, keylogger. And keyloggers are designed to silently monitor and record user keystrokes, allowing attackers to capture sensitive data like usernames and passwords without triggering obvious alerts. Question 7. A developer restructures a large application to separate independently deployable components, each responsible for a specific function, allowing for rapid updates and isolating scaling. Which architecture model is being used in this scenario? A, serverless, B, SDN, C, containerization, or D, microservices. Okay, so the key phrase for this one is separately deployable components. And I would also say rapid updates and isolated scaling. So these point to a modular application where each service operates independently, which is a defining trait of one of these answers. All right, so we can start with the process of elimination, and we can first eliminate A, serverless. Now, serverless focuses on abstracting infrastructure and running functions on demand, but it's not based on component modularity. All right. Next, we can eliminate B, SDN, which stands for software-defined networking. And SDN is related to virtualizing and centralizing network control, not structuring things like applications. And finally, we can eliminate C, containerization. And this refers to how software is packaged and deployed, but doesn't inherently define how application logic is split into things like independent services. And that leaves us with D, microservices. And microservices are it's architecture that involves designing applications as a suite of independent services, each performing a specific task and able to be developed and scaled independently. Question 8. A cloud engineering team selects an architecture model that allows workloads to be distributed across multiple zones and automatically provisioned during peak traffic. Which infrastructure consideration is most relevant to this design choice? A, ease of recovery, B, risk transference, C, scalability, or D, inability to patch. All right, so the key phrases here are distributed across multiple zones and during peak traffic. So these indicate a need to handle demand changes dynamically. All right, so let's go ahead and do the process of elimination here. And we can start by eliminating D, inability to patch. I mean, since the scenario doesn't mention update limitations or something such as, like a legacy system, that wouldn't be eligible to patch. So we could go ahead and rule out D there. Next, we can eliminate B, risk transference, which refers to shifting responsibility to like a third party, like an insurance company, but it has nothing to do with adapting on demand. So we can go ahead and rule that one out as well. And finally, we can eliminate A, ease of recovery. Now, this deals with restoring services after a failure, but has nothing to do with traffic surges. And that leaves us with the answer, which is C, scalability, which is a word that you'll hear a lot in the IT world. But scalability is the system's ability to automatically expand or reduce resources in response to varying workloads, making it essential for handling peak traffic efficiently. And a little CompTIA tip here is that a lot of times when you're taking any of the CompTIA exams, so Network Plus, Security Plus, CySA, PenTest, whatever it may be, even A plus, but I don't do A plus. Scalability 9 times out of 10 is going to refer to something as far as cloud infrastructure if you're being asked about it. So there's a little tip for you. Question 9. An administrator configures all employee laptops, disable the unused ports, remove unnecessary software, apply host-based firewalls, and enforce password policies before deployment. Which common security technique is being applied in this scenario? A, secure baselines. B, hardening workstations. C, deploying mobile MDM. Or D, network segmentation. All right, so I would say it's hard to pick a key phrase for this one since all the actions being described in this scenario are key phrases at the end of the day. However, all the actions are focused on strengthening individual concepts and endpoints for use. So that is a key, I guess. All of this is a key, if that makes sense. But let's go ahead and do the process of elimination now. And we can start by eliminating C, deploying mobile MDM, which I messed up on that because what that technically means is deploying mobile device management. So my bad on that one. But it's important to know that this scenario focuses on what to do to the actual devices, not the process of deployment, if that makes sense. All right. So next we can eliminate D, network segmentation, and this involves separating network zones, not securing endpoints. So we can rule that one out. And finally, we can eliminate A. Now this one maybe, this may have tricked you up, but we can eliminate A, secure baselines. And now secure baselines are consistent configurations, but not necessarily like deep locking down, right? Which is what's being described in this scenario. Secure baselines are before this all happens, not during. Okay, that's important to understand. So anyway, that leaves us with B, hardening workstations. And hardening a workstation involves removing vulnerabilities and tightening configurations to reduce the attack surface of that specific computing device. Now, I do want to mention, though, that after hardening workstations, based on user feedback, things like that, risk assessment, you can then add these processes to a secure baseline or as a secure baseline. So they do go hand in hand, but technically based on this scenario, hardening workstations is the action that's getting performed. All right. Now, real quick, if you're enjoying these types of questions and you want even harder questions, I do have a practice exam course on Udemy. The practice exams have 270 questions, cover all domains, are timed just like the real exam, and each question provides explanations so you can learn why you got the question right or wrong. If you're interested in the supplemental practice exams, you can find the link to the Udemy exam in the description and pinned comment below this video. But anyway, all right, let's get back to the video. Question 10. A financial analyst is calculating the expected monetary loss every time a specific system failure occurs, using asset value and the percentage of damage likely to result from such event. Which risk analysis element is being used in this scenario? A, probability. B, exposure factor. C, ARO. Or D, SLE. All right, so I would say there's two key phrases here. The first one is expected monetary loss. It's pretty important. And another important one is using asset value. So this points towards like a per incident financial impact calculation, not frequency or something like a trend, okay? So let's see here. We can go ahead and do the process of elimination. And we can start with A, probability. And probability refers to how likely an event is, not the dollar amount that would be involved or based off the impact. Okay? It's important to understand that about probability. Next, we can eliminate C, ARO, which ARO stands for annualized rate of occurrence. And this measures how often an event is expected per year, but not the loss per event. All right? And finally, we can eliminate B, exposure factor. Now, exposure factor is a part of the SLE formula, which SLE is the answer, but only represents the percentage of asset loss, not the full calculation. So this is a bit of a tricky question that I threw in there, but it's important to understand the differences between these different analysis, risk analysis methods for the Security Plus exam. Which that leaves us with D, SLE, which stands for single loss expectancy. And SLE, it quantifies the financial loss expected from a single event by multiplying the asset value by answer B, exposure factor. So a bit of a tricky one. Exposure factor is part of the answer in here, but it's not the whole package. So it's important to understand that. Question 11. A financial institution requires visitors to pass through a small enclosed area where one door must close before the other can open, ensuring identity verification before entering secure spaces. Which physical security control is being implemented? A, sensors, B, security guard, C, access control vestibule, or D, access badge. All right, so this one is pretty easy if you know what these mean. Well, I guess all of them would be easy if you know what they mean, but this one is designed to be easy. It's designed to make you not think a whole lot. If you think a whole lot, you might get it wrong. So take that into consideration with a lot of the questions. Anyway, we can go ahead and do the key phrases, which is, I would say one door must close before the other can open. And this pretty much describes a man-trap style control that physically restricts entry, which is what's being described here. Okay? So let's go ahead and do the process elimination, and we can start by eliminating B, security guard. I mean, this involves personnel monitoring. It's not automated or anything like that, so bad answer, get rid of B. Next, we can eliminate A, sensors. Now, these are things that would, in this case, most likely detect movement or presence, but it doesn't physically restrict access. And finally, we can eliminate D, access badge. Now, this validates credentials, but doesn't enforce the two-door restriction that's described in the scenario, and that's pretty important. And that leaves us with the answer, which is C, access control vestibule. And this is another word, simply put, for a man trap, which enforces strict entry by requiring one door to close before another opens. But it just, it's popular in high restricted areas, and it just adds another layer of identity and access verification. But anyway, be honest with me. Did you know what a vestibule was? Sounds like vegetable, but it's not. All right, question 12. A competitor secretly hires attackers to infiltrate a company's network and steal confidential research data in order to gain a business advantage. Which motivation best describes this activity? A, service disruption, B, espionage, C, blackmail, or D, revenge. Okay, so the two biggest keywords here are competitor and business advantage. These highlight the act of stealing, confidential or sensitive information for a strategic all-in-one plan. So let's go ahead and do the process of elimination now. And we can start with A, service disruption. since the goal here isn't to shut down operations, but to secretly take data. Next, we can eliminate C, blackmail. Now, this would involve using stolen data to extort, not to gain an advantage, usually. Not always, but usually. But in this scenario, it doesn't seem like that would be the case. And finally, we can eliminate D, revenge. Mainly because the motivation described is competitive, a competitive advantage, not something like retaliation, right? And that leaves us with B, espionage, which is the act of stealing sensitive or confidential information to gain intelligence or strategic benefits, often for business or nation-state purposes. Question 13. An organization is concerned about the financial consequences of a ransomware attack, so they purchase a cybersecurity insurance policy that will cover recovery costs if an incident occurs. Which risk management strategy is being applied in this scenario? A, risk mitigation, B, risk acceptance, C, risk avoidance, or D, risk transference. Okay, so on a previous question, I kind of gave the answer away if you were paying attention to some possible answer explanations here. So let's see if you remember. I would say the two key phrases here are cybersecurity insurance, that should be number one there, and cover recovery costs, which is the point of an insurance, right? But these highlight, shifting the financial burden of the risk to an outside party. So let's go ahead and do the process of elimination. And we can start with A, risk mitigation. Now, this is important because the company isn't reducing the likelihood of the attack, only preparing for its cost, the aftermath, right? Next, we can eliminate B, risk acceptance. The company is not, choosing to live with the risk without action. So this is incorrect. And finally, we can eliminate C, risk avoidance. And this would mean eliminating the exposure altogether, which, such as something like disconnecting systems if they're compromised or infected, but that's not what's happening. And that leaves us with D, risk transference. Risk transference involves shifting the responsibility for financial or operational consequences to a third party, often through insurance or something like outsourcing. So think of what's happening in this scenario, right? There's a ransomware attack here, and they purchase a cybersecurity insurance policy that will cover the recovery costs if an incident occurs. They're transferring that risk to somebody else, just like car insurance or health insurance, right? Depending on where you live. But car insurance, you're paying for it monthly, right? And the whole point of car insurance is if you were to get in an accident, you pay a much smaller, penalty or a deductible, and you transfer that risk, so that high payment of replacing a vehicle or medical bills from the crash, to somebody else like an insurance company. That's exactly what's happening here. Question 14. A university is deploying secure Wi-Fi and wants users to log in with their campus credentials. The design requires a centralized authentication server to validate those logins. Which solution should the university implement? A, WPA3, B, 802.1x, C, Radius, or D, TACAX Plus. Okay, so if you don't know what any of these are, you're in a struggle unless you have unless you're getting lucky and have a 25% chance of getting this one right. These are all real words and they're all within the 701 exam objectives. So you might get a question that's like this. You've got to study up on the exams. All right, so the key phrase for this one is centralized authentication server. So this points to a backend that specifically processes and verifies credentials, and that's very important to get this question right. So let's go ahead and do the process of elimination here. And we can start by eliminating A, WAP3. Now, WPA3 provides wireless encryption, but it's not an authentication server at the end of the day. It helps process it, but it doesn't do the authentication. Next, we can eliminate B, 802.1x. And this is an access control framework, but it still requires a server behind it. And finally, we can eliminate TACACS+. And this is primarily used for authenticating administrator access to network devices, but not something like end-user Wi-Fi authentication. And that leaves us with the answer, which is C, Radius. And Radius is the centralized authentication server that is used to validate user credentials for network access. And it's integrated with 802.1x and enterprise Wi-Fi deployments, which also backs onto WPA3, which is possible answer number A. So you can see that 3 of these possible answers are technically partly correct, but the question's asking which, it's a centralized authentication server. Only one of these is that. Now, WPA3, 802.1x, and Radius, they all work together, but only one of these are the server, and that's Radius. So, tricky question. All right, question 15. A security manager is estimating the potential yearly financial loss from a specific cyber threat by multiplying the cost of a single incident by how often it is expected to occur annually. Which element of the risk management process is being applied in this scenario? A, ALE or ALE, B, SLE, C, ARO, or D, exposure factor. So we had a similar question to this previously a few questions ago. Do you remember what some of these different definitions are? Now this is common in CompTIA exams, is that you may choose an answer, at one point in the exam, only to get a question about something similar and it changes your mind. So hopefully the question before this kind of helps you guide in the right direction of what the answer for this one is if you're unsure. Let's go ahead and do the process of elimination right now. And we can start by eliminating B, SLE, which was the answer for the last one. And that is single loss expectancy. Since that only measures the cost of a single incident without 100% considering frequency. Next, we can eliminate D, exposure factor, which represents the percentage of an asset's value lost per incident. So it's not the annual totals. And finally, we can eliminate C, ARO, which is annualized rate of occurrence, which tracks frequency alone without calculating financial impact. And that leaves us with A, ALE, and that calculates the expected yearly financial loss from a specific threat by multiplying the single loss expectancy, so SLE, by the annualized rate of occurrence, ARO. Question 16. A database administrator encrypts entire hard drives on company laptops so that if the devices are lost or stolen, all stored data remains protected. Which encryption solution is being implemented in this scenario? A, FDE, B, file encryption, C, partition encryption, or D, record encryption. Okay, so if you know what some of these are, I would say think about it a little bit, and it's a pretty easy question. But the key phrase for this one is encrypts entire hard drive. That's important. This applies, that the entire disk is being encrypted, not a part of it or a single item of it. So let's go ahead and do the process of elimination now. And we can start with D, record encryption. This usually applies to database records, not device storage, but while it's a real thing, it's actually not on the 7-1 exam objective, so wanted to throw that in there to trick you. Gotta learn the objectives. Next, we can eliminate B, file encryption. And this is incorrect because this refers to specific files, but that means it leaves other areas of the disk exposed. And finally, we can eliminate C, partition encryption. And this would only protect a section of the drive, not the entire disk. That's key. And that leaves us with A, which is the answer, FDE, which is full disk encryption. And FDE protects all data on storage devices, or on a storage device, I should say, ensuring that if the laptop in this scenario is lost or stolen, the entire disk remains unreadable without proper authentication. Question 17. A user tries to log into their bank's website but accidentally types the address incorrectly and is redirected to a fake site designed to steal their credentials. Which threat vector is being exploited in this scenario? A. Watering hole. B. Business email compromise. C. Brand impersonation. Or D. Typo squatting. All right, we had one really similar earlier. A little bit different. I really hope you get this one right. If you don't, it's cool. I hope you get it right. All right, so let's take a look at the key phrases here. For this question, I would say it's accidentally types the address incorrectly and redirected to a fake site. Now, these clearly describe a malicious site taking advantage of mistyped URLs. And that's very, very similar to the question that we had before, isn't it? So let's go ahead and do the process of elimination. And we can start by eliminating B, business email compromise. This would involve something like fraudulent emails, not fake websites, commonly referred to as something within phishing. Not always, but has a lot to do with phishing. Next, we can eliminate C, brand impersonation. And brand impersonation mimics a brand's look and feel, but doesn't rely on typing mistakes. Now, it's important to note that brand impersonation could be happening here, but this scenario is asking what the threat vector is, all right? And finally, we can eliminate A, watering hole. Yes, very similar to the last question we had. I just want to make sure you're paying attention and learning. But a watering hole involves attackers compromising a trusted site that targets visitors, frequently, but it doesn't rely on user typos like D typo squatting does, which is the answer. And typo squatting occurs when attackers register misspelled domains that look like legitimate sites. That then tricks users who mistype URLs into revealing sensitive information. A common thing would be like if you're trying to fool somebody that goes to apple.com. So the real apple.com is apple.com, but it could be aple.com or apl. I forgot how to spell Apple. apple.com, right? So those are examples of typo squatting. You can easily have a typo, and you take it to a malicious site, and then boom, you log in because you need help with something, but you're actually typing your credentials to somebody that is not going to help you. Let's put it that way. But D, typo squatting is the answer. All right, question 18. A firewall in the data center malfunctions, and instead of blocking traffic, it allows all connections to pass through so business operations are not interrupted. Which failure mode is demonstrated in this scenario? A, fail closed. B, active monitoring. C, inline filtering. Or D, fail open. All right, so the key phrases for this question are allows all connections to pass and which failure mode. Now these point to a design where availability is prioritized over security during something like a failure. Okay, let's do the process of elimination. We can start with B, active filtering. And it's important to note that this describes in the scenario device behavior, but active filtering is not a failure mode. So we can rule that one out. Next, we can eliminate C, inline filtering. And this refers to how traffic is inspected, not how a device responds when it fails, okay? So we can go ahead and rule that one out as well. And finally, we can eliminate A, fail closed. Now, a fail closed failure mode, it would block all traffic, all right, which would prioritize security, but then there would be no availability. So it would heavily disrupt business operations. So what's being described is in the scenario is actually the opposite. So The answer for this one is D, fail open. And fail open means that when a device fails, it defaults to allowing all traffic, so it would prioritize availability over security, which is what's being demonstrated in this scenario. Question 19. A cloud engineer disables unused APIs, enforces strong IAM policies, applies encryption for storage and transit, and removes default accounts from virtual machines running in the cloud. Which common security technique is being applied in this scenario? A, secure baselines. B, hardening cloud infrastructure. C, network segmentation. Or D, application allow listing. Now, I would say that this question is easy if you don't look too far into it. And another CompTIA tip here, a lot of questions are like that. A lot of questions, you look into it so much that it becomes hard then. So this is one of those questions where don't look into it deeply and you might get it right. So anyway, let's go into the process of elimination now, and we can start by eliminating C, network segmentation. This divides environments on a network level, but doesn't cover IAM or anything like API restrictions. Next, we can eliminate D, application allow listing. Now, this would control software execution and is a list of what is allowed to be executed, but it has nothing to do with the question at all. And finally, we can eliminate A, secure baselines. Similar to the question we had before, right? So it's important to know that baselines are all about consistent configurations, not specific steps that are described that are, in this scenario here. And that leaves us with the answer, which is B, hardening cloud infrastructure. And hardening cloud infrastructure involves tightening configurations, restricting access, and removing unnecessary services to minimize vulnerabilities in cloud environments. So again, like the other question, secure baselines is the act after the hardening cloud infrastructure. Based on the things that you do when you're doing the hardening cloud infrastructure, you then build a new and complete secure baseline. So it's the after the fact. It's not the current or during the fact. All right, final question, question 20. A business continuity planner is determining the maximum acceptable amount of data measured in time that can be lost during a disaster without causing unacceptable damage to the organization. Which element of the risk management process is being identified in this scenario? A, RTO, B, RPO, C, MTTR, or D, AIL. Now, I always make this joke whenever I see RTO. That does not stand for request time off. Just want to get that out there. All right, so enough of my bad jokes. Similar question to I think it was 15 a little bit ago. But do you remember some of the definitions? And if you do, then you might get this one right. But let's go ahead and get to it. The key phrase for this one is maximum acceptable amount of data. All right, super important. That gives you the answer right there. Well, let's go ahead and do the process of elimination here. And we can start with eliminating D, AIL. And if you remember, that's annualized loss expectancy. And AIL calculates yearly financial loss from a threat. It's not time-based data though, okay? Next, we can eliminate C, MTTR. And that is mean time to repair. And MTTR measures how long it takes to fix a failed system. And in this scenario, it has nothing to do with recovering lost data. And finally, we can eliminate A, RTO, which is not request time off, but recovery time objective. And RTO measures the maximum downtime allowed before operations must be restored. But like the other incorrect answers, it does not measure data loss. And that leaves us with B, RPO, which is recovery point objective. And the whole point of RPO, it determines the maximum tolerable amount of data loss in terms of time. And a lot of times it guides the rules and the baselines for backups, things like that. How long or fast they should occur to help keep the operations of the business up and running in the event of, a system outage when it comes to data loss. And that wraps up this practice exam. If you're enjoying these types of videos, I also cover other CompTIA exams on this channel. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and leave a comment. But until next time, like always, good luck and have fun.